Hi, it's Jason Cooper from That Shelf. Thanks so much. Congratulations on LUCA.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
If you could tell me a little bit about what it is that you do. I think people misunderstand what actually the gig is.
So I'm the story supervisor on LUCA, and sort of means a couple different things that I do. Part of my job is supervising the story team, which is a group of artists that draw storyboards for the movie. Before we make the movie in the computer, we draw storyboards first, and it's like telling the whole movie in a moving comic book that we put up in reels, and we put temporary dialogue up with temp actors and temporary music and sound, and we just sort of see how the movie's going. So part of that job is me doing that, working with the team, and also drawing storyboards myself. And then the other side of it is working with the director and the writers in the room and helping kind of write the story. I'm not writing script pages, but we're kind of crafting the story. We're putting all of the moments of the story up in cards in the room and trying to figure out what's working and what isn't, and taking stuff down and rebuilding stuff and all that. So it's sort of like a combination of all of those things is what a story supervisor does.
Well done. I knew you could explain it better than I could. I mean this in the most positive way possible.
Okay.
Disney has gone through a lot of changes in general with the stories it tells and who gets to tell those stories.
Mm-hmm.
This is obviously a very specific story told by a director with a very specific point of view, but it seems many of the people involved with it don't necessarily come from the same heritage that the director does. If you could talk about the discussions surrounding that and what it's like to sort of balance between the need to tell a story that works for everybody and the sort of recent drive for authenticity driven by participation, not just in terms of the nature of the story.
Right. Well, the director, Enrico Casarosa, is from Italy, and a lot of the story is taken from his, minus the sea monster part, as far as I know. Maybe I need to dig in deeper to that. But, this movie is based on a very important friendship that Enrico had that was very formative for him growing up. And so Enrico was obviously a great resource as far as authenticity and the Italian feel of the movie that we were going for and all of that. Some of the crew that we had on the movie had either Italian heritage, had spent a lot of time in Italy, family in Italy. We also had internally at the studio, we had an Italian trust, which was a group of people that now live in North America, live in Bay Area, but they're originally from Italy. So they were part of, making sure we had the authenticity and getting the feel right. And I think there was also a consultant from outside of the studio that was also Italian. So we had all these different things. And then, the authenticity and the research is something that we take really seriously at Pixar, whether we're making a movie about bugs or toys or cars or sea monsters in Italy. There's a massive amount of research that's done. So there were, reference trips to Italy that the art team and the director took, and lots of photos taken, and pasta was eaten and gelato was eaten, and all of the taking really close photos of like, what is the texture of this building and how can we translate that into a CG environment. So it's sort of like a mix of all of these things that we're doing at the studio to kind of reach those requirements that you're talking about.
And again, I'm not being, I'm being delicate here, but as a storyteller, on the one hand, you want the authenticity. On the other hand, you don't want to be limited only to one's own experience. You want to be bringing in all these other elements. If you could just talk about maybe the challenges and changes you've seen over the last several years as people have been slightly more focused on sort of notions of authenticity, sometimes at the expense of notions of the purity of the story.
Right. I think, this is definitely conversation that's come up at the studio, and we're very conscious of that. And I feel like they're both sort of important sides of the discussion, but I don't know if we've ever had a moment where we felt that the authenticity was kind of holding us back. I actually feel like the going for the authenticity and and trying to find these real moments actually opens the world of the movie up more. And it's exposing us to, like, I'm someone who's never Italy. Haven't been able to take that trip. I'm a Canadian through and through, grew up in Calgary, Alberta. And so I haven't had that experience, but
I'm so sorry, by the way. On behalf of the Torontonians, I'm so sorry you grew up in, although you have Clive Burger, but we got another. Anyway.
Wow. All right. I didn't know we were going to go that, but okay. But I just sort of feel like that sort of expanding of the world and expanding of the information and the experiences that we're bringing into the movie has actually strengthened the films as opposed to limiting us in the storyteller. Now, I also feel like story is still king at Pixar, and I don't think a decision would be made of, if the story requires something that maybe bumps up against sort of a moment of authenticity, that's a moment where you kind of need to go internal and sort of think of, like, what is the story telling me to say? What does the story want this to be? And that kind of has to also be part of the driving force of making the movie. Because, if you're lucky at some point on these movies, the story kind of starts dictating to you what it's going to be. The characters start telling you what they want to do. And if you're doing your job right, you start listening to that. And all of that is going to be informed from all of the research and everything that we did anyway. So
I very facetiously have dubbed the film Call Me by Your Nemo. I'm wondering whether there were specific films or specific instances that you drew on to not only get the dynamic, this friendship between the two boys, but also stylistically narratives that you drew on during the process, or films that might have come out that you actually echoed.
Oh, I don't know if I can remember any specifics of it. We watched a lot of films, both Italian and not Italian films. It was just a lot of sort of what are some films that depict friendships in this way and relationships in general. I don't know if I can think of any specifics right now, but we definitely watched some Fellini and sort of the Italian classics. We also watched some sports movies for the race and everything. So it was a pretty broad spectrum. And then Enrico is also, as many of us are at the studio, are huge fans of Studio Ghibli films. And I think that's definitely part of Enrico's storytelling DNA. So a lot of movies, like Kiki's Delivery Service and My Neighbor Totoro and things like that also sort of found their inspirational way into the movie.
Last question. You see this at its highest highs and its lowest lows. I assume every film there's that moment where you think we're just not going to be able to do it, and it's only by experience that you're going to do it. Yeah. Can you talk about one of those moments? And again, we're called That Shelf, which is the stuff that we collect. Is there something specific about your life working in Pixar that you sort of held on to, some sort of trinket or something outside of work that maybe you collect? So those two questions. One, talk about one of those lowest moments and how you get through it, and two, what you actually sort of hold on to.
Yeah. We had a pretty tough go at every movie goes through this, exactly like you said. This is just not working. It's not landing. What are we doing wrong? And that moment for us was probably 2.5 years ago, something like that. 2 years ago, where we had we'd been trying to tell this story about this friendship and sort of the story of Luca. And we just could not get it to land. Keeping things spoiler free, we had this really great ending that we knew that there was a lot of emotional juice there. We knew that this is the scene that the movie is about. This is the thing. And the rest of the movie was just not lining up with setting up that really beautiful ending that that had been created. And so we spent weeks in the room writing on, like, we looked like crazy people. We're writing charts and ideas on boards, and then there's like pin boards with cards everywhere, and then stacks of cards on the, like, you can't even see the carpet on the floor because it's like 3 cards deep of just piles and piles of little 3x5 note cards with, you know, discarded ideas. And we were just trying to craft the story and figure out what that is, and how do we introduce the audience to this undersea world, but also set up our main character at the same time. And those were sort of like the things that we really struggled with. That was sort of the hardest part. And we were, you know, that was like 7 or 8 weeks of just like being in this little room, a small group of us, just banging our heads against the wall, trying to find it. But we came out of that with the thread of what this movie became. And then we spent the next 2 years trying to realize that and plus it and sort of craft it in such a way that we finally were able to land the story and do that wonderful ending justice.
Perfect. And just very briefly, that collecting thing, is there anything that you actually hold on to?
Collecting from Pixar or just
from
in
anything.
General?
What are you nerdy about?
I'm probably most nerdy about books and comic books, and I have a promotional background here. But if you took it down, I have a bunch of bookshelves with various art books and comic books on, and then I have a few pieces of comic book art behind me as well. And those are 2 things that I'm very nerdy about. All my movies are in a different room. And Perfect. That's another thing. So
perfect. So you're so anyway, congratulations on the film. Very nice.
Thanks, Jason.
With you.
Nice
and
meeting you.
Hope all is well during these crazy times, my friend.
Yeah, same to you.
Take care.
Cheers.